Okay. So yeah, here we have pretty standard. Excuse me. Pretty standard Artavia yellow, with the main distinction being this Goldie Delicious here, who was kind of brought to my attention a little while ago. Um, Originally, as part of a weird sort of, you use Philomena or cards that make other things into critters to kind of abuse her, but I just kind of took a look through the recent sets and looked for the critter trait, and I feel like there's enough good cards lately, like that she's just good now. I think whether you pull Bunyip or you pull Critter Choir or you pull even Opal, really isn't that bad. Um, yeah, and it doesn't matter that the Enter play exhausted because most of them have great enters play abilities, or in the case of Bunyip, you're gonna frighten it anyway, so you don't care. Um, and that extra body is another Octavia trigger anyway. So yeah, that's the basic idea behind the deck. And then we're shooting for the face-off points. We have a whole pile of bonuses up there, and yeah.
Yeah. Thing that I wanted to ask and kind of already asked in the past.
Uh huh.
Why Dance Fever? There's only 5 songs here.
Yeah, yeah. So Dance Fever, like I said, is I shouldn't say like I said because no one heard me say it the first time, but um, it's the card that like everyone always seems to yell at me whenever I don't put him in a deck uh, of of an aggro thing, and it's true. Yeah, there's only 5 songs. Part of that always comes down to like when you're building an aggro deck like this, and especially a deck that I've seen various iterations of this before, so I know sort of which cards should go in it, and then you suddenly try to throw 3 Goldie Delicious into it, and you've got to cut something. And part of that comes down to just like the way that I generally build decks is like usually I'll put a singleton copy in of all the cards that I want to put in, and then go through the list and say, okay, that's entry, that's a 3 of, that's entry, that's a 3 of, that's my resource removal, that's a 3 of, etc., etc., etc. And then eventually I'll get down to a point where it's just like, okay, let's just put 2 of everything, and how does that put me down to 45? And if that's like, if that's 45, then sometimes I'll just stop there. And that's how you end up with 2 cracking the cases and 2 friends are always there and 2, yeah, 2
I
corralling
see.
critters and such. So, like, there's always room for refinement on these numbers often enough. But it's true. I think we brought this up earlier that you could consider getting rid of Dance Fever, given that I've got enough. Given that I'm running such a high and low, and I've got enough. I've got a lot of ways to flip Octavia, so I could consider getting rid of him. Yeah, and replacing him with, well, I don't know. Like, the interesting thing is with those extra deck slots, I would probably put in more songs, which would be an interesting situation to find yourself in.
Yeah, true.
And then everyone would
But
say,
look,
"Why don't you have Dance Fever in this deck? You've got like 8 songs in it."
yeah, but if you had like more songs and no Dance Fever, like in place of Dance Fever, I don't really know what to cut for Dance Fever. Like the first thing that probably comes into mind is Gummy, but then again, you're playing Octavia, so Gummy is useful because when you move something, you can just play Gummy right away and get free power, basically.
Yeah, he's the cheapest, the cheapest way to flip, and yeah, just turning that move into a free 2 power as well. Although it's interesting now that I think about it, like with Day Shift in the deck, you, you're probably not going to be moving stuff. Like you're going to be moving stuff with her triggers, but then you don't really want to throw Gummy down off of that because you're after score phase and the power doesn't mean anything anymore. Um,
Well, Unless you play a dilemma.
Yeah, okay, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, that happens sometimes.
Like you play a dilemma, move like Fluttershy there, and play Gummy, and there you go. It's a confront for just playing a dilemma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Never mind that I'm probably going to be paying 1 extra for my corralling critters for the 2 critter tokens again, because why not? We're Octavia.
Yeah, true. I mean, two critter tokens here is 6 power
Yeah, it's legitimately
for 180.
it's the same thing for friends were always there, putting in the 3 critter tokens. Like, well, whenever I kind of look at a card and it says, "Oh, put multiple things into play," well, there you go. That's not Octavia deck for you. That's why I think that I can really get away with running a card like Swaying the Sea Ponies um, at 8 requirement, but I think I should have no problem confronting that. And
Yep.
3 bonuses, pretty awesome.
It's the interesting deck about. Thing about Octavia decks that you can write high confront requirement problems, and you can get away with it even though you're an aggro deck because you can just bump up power so quickly,
Mm-hmm, very much so.
especially in yellow.
Okay, well, that about covers this one. So we move back to yours.
Yeah. Back to the future.
Basically, yeah. All right, give us the shtick again.
So the idea of this deck is it's a farming deck. Well, the primary idea was a farming deck, but in the end, it's also a control deck. So what you do is you play Embers, which help you fight your own troublemakers and help you defend your own troublemakers. And Embers are also really helpful in pretty much any face-off, like against Stick, for example. And you can like the basic idea of this deck initially was to play portals on your exposed, and then later I found out about zeroed out too, to bring out troublemakers at immediate speed to stop your opponent from confronting problems immediately, which helps a lot, especially against dilemmas and stuff like that. And then later you can farm your own troublemakers as well. You don't need to uncover them or anything because you just bring them from your deck or discard pile. So that's why we have Shining Armor here. He helps you fight your own troublemakers. It's 4 power for 2, and it also gives you AT each time you win a troublemaker face-off. And that works for both sides. If you win a troublemaker face-off, like if your opponent challenged your troublemaker and you win it, you gain AT, discouraging your opponent from challenging troublemakers left and right.
Mm-hmm. It's not quite as good as prepared, but it is still pretty good on that front.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally, as you say, he also goes off proactively whenever you do any farming yourself. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing is, like I see you've got. I assume your train conditions is going to go blue almost all the time.
Usually blue, yeah.
Uh,
Most of the time it's blue.
and so then you've got just the barrels and speeches as your ways to get to expose, right?
Yeah, it is greedy. I'm not. But I can allow myself to be that greedy because no one, like, not everyone is going to remove motivational speech from play when I also got the Indo posters and sticks.
Yeah, actually.
Because those are usually more valuable targets.
Good point, actually, yeah.
So yeah, like if this deck wasn't running other resources, I would run more entry, but I think I can allow myself to do that, at least like from my experience playing this deck. I've never had an issue with an entry, even though I'm playing 3 colors here.
Right, yeah. It's true. You not have too much writing on the white. And yourself being control farming, your problems are probably relatively safe for the most part.
From my experience, problems usually don't change and I stick with my trading traditions. So I'm happy when my problem is replaced because usually, like in the middle of the game, there's something better in my problem deck than trading traditions. Like having blackmail is great, or on the case is also great.
Yeah. Or even halfway across Equestria as well. Always a standout in this kind of decks. And how about Tempest Shadow? The ultra rare, that is. You've got the singleton copy of her in there.
I used to have 2 of her, but then she's kind of expensive and her effect is not that great, but I think she's still great enough for me to run 1 copy of her. Because like there's nothing better than putting 2 mimics into play with 1 Tempest Channel.
It's a good point, actually, now that I think about it, yeah.
And I mean, she also has prepared, which helps a lot. You just put mimics or other troublemakers into play and use her that way. Like there were multiple times in the game that I really like used her and she helped me win the game.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point that there's not much better than effectively being able to run 6 mimics.
Also, an interesting thing is with her, it's often important to specify which troublemaker is a token one, because my deck interacts with discard pile, like troublemakers in discard pile because of exposed, and it's gonna work. So you usually want your real copy to be defeated first, so you can bring it back if you don't have another one in your discard pile. And that's kind of why I always say, like, this is a token and this is the real one each time I play Tempest.
Yeah, good point. Always make sure of that.
I also want to say a couple of words about Trixie here. And sort of like about troublemakers in general, I guess. So the Trixie I used to have more copies of Trixie in this deck, but because she kind of fires the both directions, she's a double-edged sword. I cut her to 1, so her text friends here lose and can't have abilities means that my zeroed out and exposed don't get their abilities, and I can't use them if I play them to Trixie to get more troublemakers out, or then I portal them to Trixie. And my Shining Armor doesn't have competitive anymore, so it's kind of hard to farm Trixie for yourself. Another caveat is that someone can move my Ember to Trixie to disable her. So yeah. Trixie can ruin your day as well, so that's why there's only 1 copy of her to deal with annoying friends that your opponent has. Because the ultimate organizers, you can move those friends to Trixie and then lose their abilities, which is really helpful.
Oftentimes, yeah. Very much so. Yeah, I actually wonder how, like, in your experience playing this deck, how often are you playing it like as a control deck, and how often are you playing it as an actual like normal farming deck?
I mean, I wouldn't say it plays like a normal farming deck that often. Like, it really depends on what you're playing against. But I mean, this deck doesn't really score points outside of farming troublemakers, so you end up farming troublemakers anyway. You have to, because you don't usually confront problems or anything. You just farm your own troublemakers. There's even, I wouldn't say there's enough like friends here to confront problems consistently. I just won't have enough power usually for that.
And you've got a number of problems that those white requirements are pretty hard to meet.
Yeah. I mean, blackmail on the case, I'm never going to confront that. Because 6 white and 4 white is really hard to reach with this deck. But that's mostly like, it's kind of a mix between control and farm. You usually play a control game while farming troublemakers. Like you have a mimics out and you farm epics on other problem. And if someone is about to defeat your epic somehow or a mimic, you can just immediately portal zeroed out or exposed and bring another troublemaker so they don't get points.
Yeah, it seems like I've always said to myself sometimes that um, that farming really is a control strategy, and I think this deck really does exemplify that. That you know you're you're totally fine to just not be able to farm a troublemaker on one turn and sit back and say, okay, well, I mean, I don't think my opponent's gonna be able to do anything about it, so we can afford to take it a little bit slower and take points when we can get them, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, if I manage to not win against my troublemaker, my opponent doesn't get to win against them either. That's how it usually goes.
Yeah.
So there's one big weakness of this deck is it is relies on friends on the field too much, which means like pinks. If pink managed to remove all your friends, this deck kind of falls apart. Because you need Ember, you need Shining Armor, or like other friends to farm your own troublemakers. Having Ultimate Organizers is also great. And yeah. And if you don't have any of that, it's gonna be hard for you to farm your own troublemakers or to protect them.
Yeah, I guess. It's true. Like as you said that, my first thought that came to my mind was like, well, why don't you just like put in a photo finish and then you can actually win off your control? But it's true. Like, I mean, we're talking about pink. If you put in photo finish, that doesn't mean much because then it just gets removed first, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what helps this deck a little bit because usually no one removes Shining Armor. They target Embers or Ultimate Organizers. But Shining Armor is still very helpful to fight your own troublemakers. And this deck flips high. It flips, I think, around 4 on average. Something around that.
Yeah. Average is pretty close to 4.
So yeah, so you can still like farm your own TMs with just Shining Armor. So yeah. I also want to note about Chrono Trigger here. She was initially here because she's a kind of low power troublemaker for core with 2 points. Like Crystal is a 7 power and she's 6, and that's kind of a big difference in power. She's easier to farm. And her effect can be useful against chaos control. Then your opponent controls their top deck, and you just banish their top deck before you fight it. Before you fight the troublemaker.
Yep.
And she, of course, can hit you as well, because if she banishes your interdimensional portal, that's kind of sucks.
Yeah. I guess one card that as I said earlier, this is like kind of fortuitous because I like just recently built a pro blue deck myself, and one card that I thought was like really essential for that kind of deck was Star Scroll Research. In that, like, obviously, and as you say, you're right. You have like a fair enough flip average yourself. Maybe you don't necessarily need it, but I thought that like, you know, being able to have those guaranteed 7 flips sometimes when the face off requires it seemed like a good idea to
me. Yeah, maybe, but I'm not really sure what to cut here for it. Like, you can see I'm running 3 resource removals, one of which is Rest in Pieces. This is because I wanted to have more cards. And, like, there's, like, no room for things here, I think.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Like, maybe cut amount of Mimics, because, like, 3 Mimics a little bit too much in this deck, given how much it likes to rehash Troublemakers, to just bring them back from your discard pile, but still.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you can get away with it just fine, or get away with not running it rather.
I mean, the other candidate to cut is Nubcakes, but on the other hand, this deck has no removal except it's gonna work on Nubcakes.
Yeah.
So you can't really remove it.
No, Nubcakes is absolutely essential.
It's also a Star Soul Research backwards. You control your opponent's top deck.
And how often do you have the nightmare flip of one of your cover to covers?
Oh, I did many times.
Yeah.
I know that's why people don't like cover to cover, but it's kind of like you in Dance Fever.
Yeah.
It's me and cover to cover.
That's a good point.
I always include cover to cover in my purple decks.
Well, that's totally understandable. I think it's absolutely, yeah, like that's Purple's whole thing these days. Is just having that AT advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And Meticulous helps a lot. And I was talking about prepared being a thing, not quite with Shining Armor, but it's perfect. When you're not doing face-offs, you don't. I mean, or you're not doing problem face-offs, which you said earlier that this deck doesn't really do all that much. Then you never end up with a situation where Twilight's sitting at home, and her prepared and her AT are working, but her Meticulous and her main phase action are working, but the prepared isn't. When she's at the problem, you've got all three of those abilities sort of firing, as it were, and that turns into a super value powerhouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like cover to cover as a card. Like, I'm ready to suffer through 0 flips for her.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. I think we talked about this one a fair amount. We do have one deck left, that being the one submitted by Solving. He didn't, he wasn't able to make it for the stream today, but he did give us a deck to talk about.
And it has tricks in it.
It does, yes. I'm sure he had you in mind. Let me just quickly bring up the small write-up that he gave us. So he says the basic idea is to eternally keep opponents off of problems. Originally built off of an old Harmony deck that's been updated for core. 0 resources to make sure that the opponent's resource removal is not worth anything. However, he says the biggest issue is you can't often rid yourself of photo finish. It's true. You need, it's kind of lacking on the hard removal, and losing his losing the Carolite Knight's Twilight main was an unfortunate as well. He says he doesn't think the version is particularly great, but has some potential. And so the interesting thing straight away, I mean, it's clear that we're going for a pretty solid theme here of moving the opponent's stuff. And you put in Ponyville Emergency and Burning Bridges. And even, Spike and Trixie. And we've got like every purple card that moves your opponent's stuff that I can imagine right now. Which is pretty great.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, never mind the Trixie love. We've got 9 spikes in here. That's pretty impressive on its own right. And being mono purple as well, we can get away with the Starlight main not flipping early pretty well as well. Although, now that I think about it, let me see here.
I mean, are there any benefits from running Starlight main here?
None outside of the main itself. I mean, you have to reach a little bit. Like, if your opponent's running like Breakdown or something, then there's something to be said for having your cards all ready on the turn that you flipped her over. But normally, Starlight runs with the immediate exhaust to gain AT cards, because then she's even more AT for you. Here, I think she's just gonna give you the extra ready phase AT in this deck.
Yeah, okay.
And
I mean, there are no really better options for a purple main in core. Like Ambassador doesn't really work because you'd have to cut some cards to be able to flip her at all. And Tempest Tempest doesn't work because there's no troublemakers here, and say for Professor Sparkle.
yeah, same thing. Although it's interesting, like I was getting prepped to say that hey, we're mono purple, so we don't care about Starlight not flipping. But now that I'm looking at this requirement curve, we've got Magical Pony and Zecora, and that's our only really pathways into purple, right?
Yeah, and we can't play anything except those cards unless our main is flipped.
So probably a little bit greedy on the color requirement here.
Yeah. I would maybe go into white here for some more showy, like you move stuff away and you don't let get it back.
Showy? Yeah, that'd be nice. And white, of course, also gives you the normal. You can get photo finish for your win condition, or it's you get some proper removal, which as he said, the deck is really short on. Well, short. It's pretty much devoid of actual removal. Not even Napcakes. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd probably include some nutcakes.
Yeah. I think about even like Portal. Well, yeah, you've got like actually, yeah, you've got a lot of things that you can portal on your own side.
Actually, now that I think a little bit about it, Trixie might be a good main here. I mean, there are not much immediate events here, but there are some that help you win face-offs, like Burning Bridges or Interdimensional Port. Like, all of them help you win face-offs.
Pretty much, yeah.
So you can very well benefit from Trixie here by playing events cheap and by winning face-off with scoring points that way.
Yeah, Trixie's flip condition is like play an event and pay 2 extra, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd need like maybe you have more experience with that main for some reason I don't know. So like what kind of events do you usually put into a deck with her to make her work?
I deck with Trixie.
Yeah.
I mean, Portal War's great. Through the Ages is also a really good event for face-off trick because it costs you 0, and against some particular decks, like a Critter deck or something like that, it works really great because you like it's an area of effect debuff, and if someone plays a lot of tokens, you just debuff everything, getting them rid of all their power. Scope Things Out is a great event for that. Like you control your flip, and if you have some chaos effects, it's work well. So yeah, I mean, pretty much any immediate event that helps you in the face-off is a good one. With a Trixie main.
Yep. I actually just noticing here, there's a really cheeky thing that you can do. Like, looking at Portal, it's worth pointing out that if you portal Vexing Spike, you will actually get his Leaves Play trigger just as well as So there's like that makes him, Trixie, Snowfall, Twilight, all cards that will essentially do the same thing when you portal them. It's just move an opposing character.
Yeah. I'd also like to see Storm King here.
Oh, Storm King would be. Yeah, I guess if you got a deck that's focused on moving, you may as well, right?
I'm not sure what would I cut for it, but I'd like to see something here. Maybe cut natural 20. I mean, I see that natural 20 helps you against troublemakers, but at the same time, it just delays them. But then again, it's an immediate
Yeah.
that you can also use, like when someone tries to farm a troublemaker, you just turn it face down.
Hmm. Well, how's about like Luna up here at the top? She's giving you Meticulous. She's giving you extra tokens from time to time. But would you consider her like maybe a cut on her for your Storm Kings instead?
Maybe? I'm not sure. Like, without playing the deck, it's hard to say. Like, maybe these tokens really help you out with confronting problems and eventually winning the game.
Yeah, I guess
I can see that.
I guess maybe it's a good point that like I see purple and I see well purple and like cover to cover and such, and and all this movement. I'm saying, oh, this is clearly a control deck, but you know, given that we don't have any photo finishes and such, and actually given our problem deck, which is it's a little bit high-ish, but there's also some low ones in there. You know, it's like maybe this is actually an aggro deck, and you know, or rather, you know, is gonna win by starting face-offs and scoring bonus points. So having yeah, in that sense, having Web of Dreams to create more power for you every so often seems like a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have number one assistant as well, serving as essentially the core f-stop, as we all know that he is. Um, not a not a perfect replacement, but oftentimes so he gets the job done.
It's kind of like risky though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again.
Like F-stop, you just play and get the card back. And with Spike, you can get removed and you never see your card back.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways that can happen too. Virtually every color has some way to get those to make sure those cards are banished forever.
Mm-hmm. Well, orange maybe can't do much about it, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good point. Orange. Yeah, you're fine against orange because then you don't care if he's exhausted. Like if he's exhausted, you can't get more stuff for him, but you can still get the events back if you want.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, an interesting theme. But I would really like to see like more white here. And if we're not talking core, but talking harmony, white gives you so many good things like stand still, and you also get things like miss teleport and other stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, like he said in the write-up that this was originally a harmony deck, and I know that we all have our own opinions of harmony, but it's worth considering perhaps like just leaving it as harmony and letting it do its thing there.
But it's also nice to see like if this can be done in core and how well it can work.
Yeah. Either way, cool deck. It's always like good to if you have an idea for a deck, just say, okay, I'm going to build a deck that does this thing really well. In this case, clearly it's moving your opponent's friends, and that way, no matter what, at the end of the day, you're going to have a deck that is good at doing that thing, regardless. And so, always a good starting point, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. I guess that covers the 3 decks we had to talk about today.
Some of them twice.
Some of them twice, yeah. little unfortunate that I'm gonna maybe look into getting some better audio equipment here on my side if things are currently less than good at the moment. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I'm just like actually looking at the scene and wondering if you're getting heard on it right now or not. I hope you are. I'm actually just gonna very quickly just transition back here. Can you say something real quick?
Hello.
Okay. So yeah. Anyway, everyone saw our end screen. I'm just like a little paranoid based on what I saw that we might not have had Hithroc's audio on that. So we're just gonna transition end on this scene right here, and I'll deal with that in the meantime. All right.
I see.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you all for coming out. Our next stream is going to be July 22nd, 2 weeks from now, the usual time, usual place. If you know anybody who preferred to see our stream or want to try it again, it's going to be on YouTube in a couple of hours probably. I'll have that archive link ready to go. And yeah, until then, I've been Cursedchords.
And I've been Hithroc.
And next week, or at least next time, Solving's probably going to be there, but we'll see you in a fortnight.
See ya.